Well, by way of introduction, DrDyaus, aka Brandon, host of Game Therapy over at his own Twitch channel. By the way, could we get a shout out for DrDyaus, please? He hosts Gaming with a Therapist, where mental health is always on the table, open, accepted, and dissected as needed to support his viewers, which is much appreciated, especially on Twitch, where we have some pretty high mental health related struggles common as streamers. So he is a mental health professional, clinical social worker, with over a decade of experience spanning throughout the human lifespan and experience. He's worked with hospice care for the elderly, pain and palliative for the young, dual diagnosis, serious and persistent mental illness, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, which is always a mouthful for me to say, so I have to say it a little slower, and traditional cognitive behavioral therapy in pediatrics, family, and direct hospital work involving suicide, crisis assessments, and acute traumas. He launched his streaming career only recently, as he wanted to bring his experience in the field of crisis mental health assessment and therapy to the masses, specifically his gamerkin. So if you guys aren't following Dr. D, please be sure to click that link that Bitemark just posted.
Thanks, Bitemark.
And give him a follow as well. So in addition to all of that, he is particularly interested in the intersection between technology communities and healing of trauma and phobias with its use. Additionally, the gamification of things, therapy included, to expedite the healing process, regardless of an individual's diagnosis. When he is not gaming and streaming, he's working his 40-plus hours and is the father of 2 healthy children, husband to his smarter, better half, Dr. I'm going to pronounce this wrong. How do you say your wife's name?
It's Leonore backwards, so Eronoel.
Oh, Leonore Backers. Oh, hey, well, there you go. Okay. Who holds a PhD in Cultural Anthropology, as a frequent guest and behind-the-scenes commenter on the stream. So definitely huge warm welcome. We appreciate you being here. Philip McCracken, no worries. Riku, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate the lurk. So you let me know that you've been gaming since a young age and that you started gaming on Nintendo. So could you start off by telling us kind of what your progression in gaming has been and what you mainly play now?
So progression in gaming, let's see. Nintendo, I think, is incorrect because my dad used to sell candy. Like, he worked as a candy salesman. And so we had one of these old school arcade machines that we played. So that was probably the first video game. Or Pong. Everybody played
Pong. Oh, Pong. Nice.
Yeah, we had like the twist panels or things, right? On one side, you twist it and make the panel pedal move, and the other side, you make the pedal move and bounce the ball back and forth. It was a lot of fun. So that was probably the first game. RPGs have always been kind of my thing. Never been into sports games. Not a sports guy. Let me think, what else? Final Fantasy was probably my favorite game of all time. Final Fantasy 3. I don't remember which one that is actually as far as the release goes, but that was probably my favorite. And then Final Fantasy 7. And then that morphed into MMORPGs when I probably was 18, I want to say. And Ultima Online was my first and probably my favorite.
So Ultima's your favorite MMORPG?
Yep. That was my first and favorite, probably. But that's through the lens of nostalgia, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because you can go back and play these games, many of them on like private servers if you don't want to pay for the client, pay for it. And same, I've gone back and realized maybe it doesn't hold up over time, but it still has a lot of endearing qualities that I really, really love. You know, yeah.
Well, I can't say shit because my favorite MMORPG is still RuneScape.
I've seen you playing that.
Yes. I really enjoy that. I've been playing that for 15 years. And wow. It's one of those that I will stop playing and then come back to, and stop playing and then come back to.
Yeah.
It just can't be beat. I played one of the Final Fantasy games, but I cannot remember which one to save my life.
Was it the MMO or one of the single player RPGs?
It was one of the MMO, but it was a long time ago. This would have been
13. I think it was 13.
Yeah, this would have been like 2004.
Yeah, that was when I was in my undergrad. Yeah, we played it too. We were addicted. That was a great game.
Yeah, it was good. I played actually now I can't remember what I was. I think I was a dwarf. But I made my character have red ends on her hair.
Nice.
Which I still kind of do.
Customizations were pretty good.
Yeah, they were. They were. That's like me with WoW. It's not the same now. Yeah, Bitemark plays WoW. And WoW
Classic isn't for you, Bitemark? Did you go back to it and suffer through that?
I don't think she did go back and play that again. Did you with that new when they came back out with Classic? I don't think that she did. I don't think she did. So this is not necessarily gaming related, but I found something really interesting in talking to a lot of mental health professionals, and that is that they tend to have a favorite serial killer or really like true crime for some reason. So my question to you is, do you have a favorite serial killer?
So when I read that question, I thought about it for a minute. I'm like, I used to be obsessed with we had this thing when I was in the service for a short period of time. We had the Museum of Death down in San Diego, California. So you could go in and see like the famous serial killers. They had them up along the walls, like pictures all along the top of the thing. And then they had like a real electric chair that they had brought in and relics of all these different serial killers and stuff. Anyway, fascinating. One sec.
Nope, no problem.
Had famous serial killers and everything, and then my favorite one that I was thinking about was Dexter.
I love Dexter.
Wasn't a real serial killer, but that was the first thing that came to my mind. I loved Dexter, and I thought he's kind of a vigilante. He's super, super smart, and he was obviously written very well until the end. If you've followed the season all the way through, it's kind of But anyway, the Dexter was my favorite. But then I was talking to my wife about that question. She has much more of a fixation on serial killers, I think, and the one. She's the peanut gallery. She likes to talk.
Give that girl a mic. Come on.
Right. Where he was eating people in San Francisco. I think it was San Francisco. Jeffrey Dahmer. That was the one. And that was the one that was always kind of captivating. Yeah. Dexter, otherwise.
I mean, Dexter was a great show. I think a lot of people were disappointed in the ending and just the way that they kind of just, we'll just drop it over here. It's fine. Yeah, that was a great show, though. I watched it a couple times through. Oh, by Mark says, I may or may not have played Vanilla WoW on a marginally legal server prior to Classic WoW being released.
So you had that experience in advance, right? You didn't have to get it through the pace. Nice.
Yep. So getting more to the topic of tonight, your specialties range from serious and persistent mental illnesses and dual diagnosis programming and therapy to trauma-focused CBT. So why do you do what you do, and kind of who or what inspired you to get into this field and into mental health?
So I haven't seen too many of the other videos where we're doing the pro versus non-pro thing, but my experience has been everybody that I've spoken to as a professional in the business has been because I've been broken somewhere along the way. And so they come into it with the experience of, I want to heal myself. I want to find somebody to heal myself, or I want to serve the population in which I was damaged through, and I'm no different. So I came from a pretty crappy background. And so my thought was, I didn't actually think I wanted to do this work until my family and all my friends started telling me, hey, people really love to talk to you. You really should go into this business. And so Cultural Anthropology was my second choice, and I opted not to do that. So here I am.
But your wife does that. Did you know her before that interest developed, or?
No, we actually met when she was still in high school. So I've been married for 20 years, long time. And
she knows how many years.
she knows. Well, it was 2000, so almost 20.
Okay, well, that's easier.
Yeah. So the anthropology is what our undergraduate degrees are in. So we both went to school for the same thing.
Nice.
We met before.
Very cool.
And then it was social work after that.
Yeah, that's been a pretty common response. Just like this really bad thing happened, and I wanted to make sure that it either didn't happen to anybody else, or that I was able to help other people, or I started in this and then I moved to this. And I've heard it a couple different ways. Like the main expression is mostly you're either one of two people. You either want to help others not go through what you've been through, or you want everyone to go through what you've been through. And I think with the mental health professional, just kind of field in general, it's very much like you want people to not have to go through something that you went through. So it's a very compassionate group of people, from what I can tell.
Yeah, there's a lot of the with that too. I think we have to avoid the whole savior complex. we can't always think that we're going to go in and save people, and realize that people can make their own mistakes and go through their own processes and help them along the way. So this model that I'm currently learning, and it's kind of a duh thing, what's called the psych recovery model. And it's all about joining with people and being witnessed and helping them along the way, rather than assuming that you are the expert or the pro, but being able to offer tidbits and support and guide, but allowing them to be able to make their own choices.
Yeah. So do you focus your programming on individuals mostly, or more of a group setting? How do you focus your programming aspect of your job?
So currently I'm not doing therapy per se. I've been doing, I did therapy for family and individual and family with pediatrics and their family, probably about, 8 years ago, I want to say. And since then, I've been doing more of crisis intervention. So that's where the suicide risk assessment and brief therapy would come into play. So a lot of strengths-based solution focused brief therapy interventions would come into play a lot when I was working in the hospital setting. And then also a lot of the trauma and PTSD work would come into it. So anything, that's where the trauma piece comes into it. So as I'd be seeing these families that would come in with these horrific injuries, these children that would come in for the horrific injuries, I'd be sitting with the families, we're going through this thing and being with them in the moment, and how do we get through it? And then with the kids, once they were able to actually be present and engage and yada, yada. So, hope I answered the question.
Yeah, no, that was great. So when you're dealing with something like a trauma, do you find it more effective to deal with that on an individual basis?
So the traumas that I dealt with were families, so systems, right? So it affects the system. I would be working with the parents, typically, whether one parent or the other, and then the child would come afterwards. Because you typically, if there was a significant enough trauma and I would be concerned for PTSD, it would be something where the patient would be admitted for several months. And so then you're doing as much therapy as you can in the moment, but there's a time when it's the acute crisis, the acute traumatic event, where you can't really wrap your hands around it, because PTSD presents at different times for everybody.
Yeah.
If it presents at all. So it varies. I mean, I suppose, so with my stuff, it was individuals and families, but there's the larger PTSD of being in a large catastrophic event. How you handle that. I don't have that one yet.
Yeah. Okay. So how common is PTSD? And then can you describe a little bit of the difference between PTSD and C-PTSD for us as well?
So the complex PTSD is going to be something that you see in kind of like systemic abuses, child abuse, those types of things. When you're constantly in a system that's constantly beating you down, either from the parents or the system as a whole. Whereas PTSD would be like there's an acute event. Let's say I fall down and I break my arm, and I'm traumatized because I had to go to the hospital and have these things, or I've been in a car accident, or one of those types of things. But a complex PTSD is going to be a longer term process for treatment, whereas a more short-term acute trauma, if it develops into PTSD, is going to be something that's not as hard to wear out. For some reason, the image of sanding a wooden table where there's a large scratch mark, and if it's for a complex PTSD, it's a large gouge. There's a huge gouge in the wood, or there's a chip in the brick, and you have to find a way to fill it or sand it or mold that shape it into the shape that you want it to be, or the person wants it to. So it's different for each thing, different types of treatment for each one.
Yeah, that's
similar.
That's perfectly fair. Thank you so much, Frost, for that raid. I appreciate you. Welcome. Could I get a shout out for Frost also? And then Philip McCracken has a question already. So what is your opinion on marijuana assistance with PTSD? And I'm not for it. Totally. I'm not sure where you're from, so
yeah, it's unfortunately not legal where I'm from. I'm from Minnesota, and it's not legal just yet.
Texas,
but I think
same.
Within the next 4 or 5 years, I'd anticipate. I think the governor is really pushing. And my personal stance is, oh yeah, bring it on. Totally awesome. I think it's great for PTSD. I think there's a fine line where we have to walk to, depending on like avoidance, like too much avoidance and not confronting things. So overuse of the thing could make it hard. So I think it's a good thing, just like CBD can be useful. I've been listening to a book, I've been reading it, but it's called basically like the use of psychotics like acid, LSD, shrooms, those types of things, and expanding the consciousness and working with alcoholics and PTSD and all these types of things. It's really interesting work, and I would be for that too. It's been expanded a lot too. I was heard like John Hopkins was getting into it and bringing that more out.
You said it was a book that you're reading? I'm sorry, I'm looking for a pen because I want to write it down.
I'm trying to figure out which one it was, honestly. Hold on just a second. My my phone just reset on me today, so I lost my audiobook.
Oh, no.
I'm have to figure it out. I know, right?
Oh, that's a bummer. Okay, I have a pen. Whenever you remember it.
All right. I'll figure it out. Keep them coming. I'm going to look it up because I have it on the Amazon account, I'm sure.
It's all good. So you mentioned CBD, and that is something that's legal. Yep. I think it's legal everywhere. Is there a significant difference between the effects of CBD versus THC on PTSD in particular? There's a lot of letters there, but
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm not an expert by any means on that, so I couldn't say. But I know that there's different types of CBD and THC oils that can have different effects on you. So
yeah.
That's about as much as I can say.
Yeah. Well, I know CBD can be used to treat like anxiety and that kind of thing. And my husband's used it with pretty good success. Also, just through, we have some, we got them at, I can't remember if this is a Sunflower shop or GNC or some vitamin shop where he got these CBD pills and he will take them, or he has like a CBD vape that he uses, and it pretty significantly just like brings down his anxiety. Now his anxiety is not from a trauma, so it's not quite the same as we're talking about here, but it's interesting to see, you know, kind of the potential really benefits for some of those things if the government would get off its ass.
Totally.
GNC has them. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, Clevitz. Okay, CBD stands for cannabidiol. Yes, it is the second most prevalent active ingredient of cannabis marijuana. While CBD is a component of marijuana, one of hundreds, by itself it does not cause a high. Yes, so CBD is like the non, what are they? There's a word for the high part. I can't remember what it is. But that's okay. Yes, that is what it is. Not the non-stoner part, or the non-stoner part. Yes,
the non-stoner book.
Oh man, I had another. So you mentioned the kind of psychedelics. Have you seen Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia?
I have not.
It is on Hulu. It is an entire kind of docu-series on Hulu by Viceland. So, I mean, take it a little bit with a grain of salt because it's on Viceland, but it's really interesting, and we've watched about half of it, and it's actually really interesting. Every episode focuses on a different psychedelic. So, if you are reading a book about psychedelics, I thought you might enjoy that. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for that follow. I appreciate it. Cool. Yes. Yeah. Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia. It is a great show thus far. I can't say anything for all of it, but the dude's a little weird, but it's a great show.
I'm bugged because I don't remember the name of this book, and I'm gonna have to dig for it.
It's okay. You'll find it. You'll find it eventually. It'll be one of those things you'll remember to like 2:00 in the morning. And so what are some of the most common causes of PTSD? And then what are some of the most common causes of CPTSD? You've mentioned a couple already, but can you kind of just summarize that for us?
So the PTSD that I was most familiar with would be related to a significant automobile accident or significant accident of some sort where you've had a life-altering experience. The one that's most significant for me was where a kid had jumped into a lake and broken his back. Young, virile, super, he was athletic, and it was just really sad. He went into it thinking, I'm going to be okay. It was I remember everything, the imagery, the smells, it's all just, I have a little bit of PTSD from doing the work.
Wow. Yeah.
But the experience he had was, I'm going to be okay. And then he comes, all of a sudden I can't move any of my appendages. I'm totally crippled. There was hope that his spine would eventually recover, but that was just one example of one of the things. But he had clear PTSD. I would imagine he would have clear PTSD because, again, I met everything on the front end, and PTSD develops as time goes on. So you don't always see where people are going to be. I worked a lot with child abuse and neglect. So both in the individual therapy setting, so I worked with TFCBT doing that. So I got to see a lot of abuse where, children would see like significant domestic violence within the home, and they would have to come and talk about it. So TFCBT is a narrative-based therapeutic model where they would have to come in and basically tell the story repeatedly over and over and over again through the written word, and then they come out and they read it. So that was pretty powerful experience too. So again, those are probably the biggest ones. So significant acute trauma and or domestic violence, child abuse, and neglect. So that was a complex trauma or the acute trauma.
Yeah. Either way, hard to work with in kids for sure.
Could be, yeah.
Phil McCracken says there's a girl I know who recently got PTSD from a car wreck. Yeah. Well, so PTSD, it's not just like it actually changes some of the pathways in your brain, right? It's one of those things that has a very physical effect on people.
So when I was coming up with different literature I could supply the viewers with, there's a book that I really enjoy called The Body Keeps the Score. You guys heard of that one before?
I have not.
I'll post it.
Oh, thank you. Perfect.
Wow, that's really long link. Sorry about that.
That is okay.
But it basically talks about like the traumas that we experience are stored on a cellular level. So as what's the word? I'm blanking on the therapy, but there's a type of therapy that we do that can unlock the trauma that you store. But yeah, it does. So with the complex PTSD, it does in fact change the neural pathways that we have, right? So as a child is growing, there have been studies that shown, and I actually did a stream on this. It was about 45 minutes where I actually did a PowerPoint presentation because I don't know how else to do it. PowerPoint presentation talking about like trauma and how trauma develops and how it alters the brain and how the brain is physically changed. So as a child comes into the world, as they come into an environment, you've done things on ACEs before, right? You've done ACEs things on your stream before?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I thought that reason I mentioned that is I thought we talked about that before.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you came in. So let me see when that was. It wasn't too long ago. We haven't talked about it in a little while.
This feels good to geek out about this stuff, by the way, 'cause I don't get to talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
On my stream, honestly, it feels like I get in on a game and I'm playing games and it's cool. I like to game. And it's there if people want to talk about it. But folks, Monday nights are like I'm talking to myself. So hi, everybody.
Yeah, I don't see where. So I know we've talked about childhood experiences, but I can't find.
Yes, we have, Roke. Yeah.
I can't find exactly where it is. We talked about trauma before. That was a while ago, though. I'm not sure that I knew you whenever we talked about trauma. We have talked about it in general, but if you want to just provide like a refresher, that would be fine.
Okay, so everybody knows what ACEs are? Do y'all know what ACEs are?
You probably everyone.
Adverse childhood experiences, right? Okay, so that was a study, Kaiser Permanente, like, I don't remember, 16,000 or something people they did longitudinally where they were researching how certain traumatic events would affect people over time, right? So with that, they began to extrapolate that those people that experience an adverse childhood experience would be more likely to engage in high-risk behaviors or possibly have an earlier death. Mm-hmm. That's what ACEs essentially are. So with the presentation that I do it's basically talks about like anybody who has had these things happen, there's in fact an alteration in their biochemical makeup, like their brain is developed completely different. And I have a slide that shows a healthy brain and a traumatized brain. On the left, the healthy brain is like fully lit up in response to a normal activity. So like if you and I have a conversation, the brain is fully lit up. There's color all over the place. And then on the right-hand side, I don't remember what side it's on, but on the right-hand side, there's the altered brain. The brain has been physically damaged, if you want to call it damaged. It's been altered into a state that's basically, it won't respond to light up the prefrontal cortex or whatnot, or the different lobes. It just doesn't light up. So somebody who has had a significant trauma, possibly your friend who's been in a car accident, would be more likely to not respond to a situation appropriately, how one who has not had these experiences happen. I think it'd be unlikely for somebody who's had like just a one-time car accident to have like a significant PTSD, but shock, yes. I think that's different. I wouldn't diagnose it so much as PTSD per se.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Rogue's on my stream all the time, and he's right. We do have some pretty good conversations about trauma. We did child abuse and neglect. We've done all kinds of stuff because, like I said, I have a generalist practice. I've done lots of different work, and so I kind of try to bring in everybody from your experiences, how that's worked, hospice to whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now there was a study fairly recently, I think in the UK. I'm gonna have to find it, so I don't remember what, but it talked about ACEs and the fact that if there are enough positive experiences in a child's life, that a single adverse childhood experience can be pretty much negated, kind of the fallout from that. Now, I don't know if there are any studies like that for C-PTSD or like kind of that continued trauma or anything like that, but I know that they show it. I was talking to my coworker about this the other day because he's about to be a new parent and was like, well, he said, I don't know if I'm going to be a good parent. I'm like, good news. You don't have to be a good parent every single day.
We have hit and miss days. It really happens.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a couple questions here. So Phil McCracken asks, can PTSD be temporary?
Yes.
And then, so there are people who they might have PTSD and just kind of get over it naturally without intervention? Yeah,
so I guess, yes, broad, right? I mean, I guess, so can it be recovered from? Yes. So I'll go back to my earlier analogy of I'm sanding a table. Eventually that crack is going to get filled in with whatever junk you put on that tabletop, right? Is that going to be a healthy way of healing? I don't know. Probably not. Might not be. Like if you're saying, I want to go and cope by just smoking weed all the time, more power to you. But are you really helping? Are you really healing from that thing? Arguable, probably not. So that negative coping skill isn't exactly what you're going to do to help you actually get through with your trauma. So what was the question exactly again? Because there was a verbiage in there that I'm curious about.
So it's just, can PTSD be temporary?
I think it's always temporary. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think we have to define what temporary is. So if we've got somebody who's, again, go back to that car accident, that's going to be a temporary PTSD. And if it wasn't, and I like I said, I would be reticent to actually diagnose it as PTSD, unless it was triggering of an event that had already transpired prior to the car accident. So had she been in another car accident that had triggered this PTSD event, then yeah, that makes sense to me. But is it temporary? Yeah, for sure. Always. Just like C-PTSD, that complex trauma can also be cured through rigorous treatment over a long period of time. It's not something that you're going to walk into the therapist's office and walk out in 3-4 sessions and be done, in theory, usually.
Yeah. So
true, totally true. Prince has a good point.
I was just going to say, Prince says, don't expect that when lessons that it won't come back now and then. Very, very true. From my experience, very true. So coping skills make those feelings go away a lot quicker. Yes, absolutely. And okay, so our next question comes from Bitemark, and she says, you mentioned grief therapy. Are there any resources you recommend for people dealing with grief?
So as far as, I'd have to pull up some literature because I haven't worked in hospice and grief for a while, but typically what I'll say is if somebody's going through significant grief is that most larger metropolitan areas have a hospice. And most of those hospices will have a social worker or a therapist that works, or a clinician of some sort that works with the agency. If you call them and ask for bereavement supports, typically they'll have resources that you can tap into for free, even local groups that you can attend, or they'll provide you with literature.
Yeah, that's great. I did find the study. It's in Science Direct, and I think this one provides the abstract and a little bit on the methods, the results, and the conclusions. So I think you can probably buy the full study if you want to. But that's the study specifically that I was talking about. Not that we need to go into it. It was just going to bother me if I didn't find it.
Yeah, so it's like in that book.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was thinking about it's the resiliency quota, whatever, the resiliency score. So if you look up ACE, what is your ACE or ACE scores? Mm-hmm. There's typically an accompanying test that you can take that takes like, what's your resiliency score? And then you can score yourself to figure out where you're at. So that's probably kind of what the story is getting at.
Yeah, we've talked about resilience and just being able to recover. The more resilient you are, the more support you have around you, the more likely you are to be able to bounce back from something like that, from something like a traumatic event or something like that. Okay, so Philip has another question. He says, can dreams give you shock or PTSD? That's an interesting question that I have never even thought about before.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know if it would be defined as PTSD. Could it be shock? Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I have this reoccurring dream that I haven't had in a long time where I was little when I had it, started having it, and I was swimming in a canal, or my family, we drove up to this canal, and I'm from California. We drove up this canal, and my family all started swimming, and I'm sitting in the car, and I'm watching them, and then they all get sucked into this giant blender at the end of the canal, and I'm watching them all die, and I'm like, but I remember that was the dream that stuck with me. It's terrifying, right? But those dreams, they stick with you, and you always wonder, like, well, what does this dream mean? Why am I having this dream? Is it something, you wake up and you want to hug your loved ones after something like that, right? So can it cause shock? Sure. Yeah, for sure. Can it cause PTSD? I don't know. Again, I would have to go back to, is it a reoccurring dream? And is that, like, is it a dream that you're constantly having about the loss of your child or the loss of something? And then, yeah, I'd say that could probably be defined as PTSD. Like, is it a traumatic event? Not in real life, but would you diagnose it as PTSD? Maybe not. Would you treat it similarly too? Sure.
Yeah. I have a recurring dream where my family is assassins trying to kill me.
That's awesome.
Although I think maybe it's true. So Philip is clarifying here. I had a dream a while back where I jumped from a cliffside, and to this day I'm a little more terrified of rock jumping at my local lake. Bite Mark's my sister, by the way, so she's definitely trying to kill me.
And how did you find this out? Yeah.
So he's had this dream that he's jumping off of a cliffside, and now he's more terrified of rock jumping at his local lake. That is so you think that you think that fear is specifically from that dream, Philip? You think that that's where that's coming from? Or did something else happen as well, just out of curiosity? Oops. Okay. We'll get him to answer here in a minute.
Okay. Why, thank you. I stole it from my son.
Nice.
My lava lamp.
Very nice. It's the only dream I can remember full detail, and yes, I've jumped from these high rocks before, and now I won't because of the dream. Okay, yeah.
So I think that's a good example of where our fears can come from, right? I mean, they can be completely unfounded in real life. But maybe there was a little part of your brain that was like, there's too much risk involved in this thing, and then you get fed this dream when you go to sleep, and then now it affects your real behavior. And those types of things can come from anywhere, right? Yeah. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a PTSD type thing, but it's certainly how your dreams are going to affect where you're at. Like if I'm going to have a dream about my spouse, my family trying to assassinate me, I'm going to be a little bit more cautious about being around my family and revealing my secrets.
Yeah.
What does it Bite Mark have to say about that?
They can try. It'll just give me more entertainment in my day.
So in my defense, my son was fearful of his lava lamp because he was afraid he was going to start his room on fire.
Oh,
so,
nice.
I got it.
I like it. Yeah. I've got a couple things where I had to ground my kids from using something that they have, but I don't like display them. So it's probably not the same.
Yeah.
Frost says I have 2 of them. Nice. Important to note that if we were assassins trying to kill you, we're really bad at it. Yes, you've been failing for so long. So long. Okay, so what are some of the warning signs and symptoms you look for to clue you in that a client has experienced something traumatic if it's not immediately obvious, like broken arm or car wreck or something like that?
So there's the detachment piece. Like, are you experiencing a lot more physical symptoms than you normally would? So are you experiencing like headaches, agitation, kind of dizziness? Are you experiencing stomach aches? Are you experiencing the physical stuff, right? As you're having palpitations over something trivial that wouldn't be a big deal to you. So let's say you had a car accident and you go in and you try to touch that door handle. And as soon as you get close to the car to touch the door handle, your heart starts racing. That would tell me you're probably having some kind of fear or PTSD response from having that automobile accident, if there was an automobile accident. But if you came to me and if you're a friend of mine and you come to me and you start saying, I can't go for a walk down the street anymore. Every time I go down the street, I feel like I'm going to faint, or I'm super dizzy, or I have a stomach ache, and I don't know what's going on. And then we start talking, and you tell me, yeah, I've been watching the evening news all the time, and there's a series of muggings in my area. It's a logical response to something that could potentially happen. So your body is alerting you to this thing. So yeah, there's lots of things. Irritability, maybe you're not sleeping enough, you're sleeping too much. I mean, the typical, just anything outside of your norm, what it would be for you, however that looks.
Okay. Is it difficult to diagnose something off the bat as trauma-related versus just general anxiety or depression? And do you treat something that's caused by trauma fundamentally differently from another diagnosis? And I guess also how often is PTSD or C-PTSD kind of a comorbid diagnosis? Throw that one in there.
Yeah, how often, I'm not sure. That's a tough one. I don't know the stats on that, so I can't speak to that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sure. I would imagine it's pretty significant. I mean, like substance abuse and dual diagnosis, right? The serious and persistent mental illness and substance uses, there's a high correlation between people that are using substances too much and being detrimental to their lives and serious and persistent mental illness because of significant trauma event in their history. So I would say that somebody who's experiencing some kind of significant depression or mental illness likely has also a traumatic event. I mean, I'm extrapolating, but I would assume so.
Yeah.
That was the latter portion of your question. What was the beginning one again?
So the beginning was, is it difficult to diagnose something off the bat as trauma or trauma related versus just general anxiety or specifically depression or a different diagnosis if it's not an obvious like they had a car crash kind of thing.
So if I'm actually doing like a full diagnosis of somebody, then I would be doing a background kind of evaluation diagnostic assessment to figure that stuff out. So I would know, has there been anything significant in your history that would denote this thing?
Please don't play the didgeridoo at me right now.
No, please do. No. You gotta break up the serious stuff.
I'm so sorry.
The joys of having family while you're streaming.
He's literally holding a didgeridoo over my computer right now and playing it. Oh, God. Okay.
Tell him one more time, please.
They said one more time, please. How do I add a quote again? I'm not telling you how to add a quote. Oh, God, you're going to get it again.
He's doing it. It's party time. We need some lights.
Oh my God.
Rocking out to the didgeridoo. I don't think I've ever done that before.
Oh, look, you can see the didgeridoo now.
Oh, nice. Those are pretty cool instruments.
That's quite enough. Thank you.
I don't know what's happening.
I don't know what's happening either, Frost. I don't either. Oh, yeah, we have a didgeridoo that I brought back from Australia for my husband, and
and now he's quite the expert at playing.
And now he's just totally, playing it at me.
I think I like the quote. If you can do that, bite mark, thanks.
Please don't play the didgeridoo at me right now. Oh, God.
That's going to be a clip. Somebody's going to make that a clip. And then, it's going to happen.
I'm in fear also.
So back to the signs and symptoms of PTSD response. And you see this often portrayed in the media. Numbness, aggression, specifically with vets. Right? So the aggression, having firearms on hand, physical aggression towards their spouses, physical aggression towards their friends. I mean, those are big signs. So if you look at that stuff too. He's in fear of the didgeridoo.
I'm not sure. Probably. So are the treatments for PTSD and for CPTSD very different for kids versus adults, or are they pretty much the same, just maybe on a different scale, or how do you approach that?
I think it's pretty much the same. So the TF-CBT cutoff, I think, for age trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, I think cuts off at 10, if I remember. It's been a while since I've done it. But all of the therapy models are pretty much the same as far as I know. trauma-focused therapy for kids is the only other difference, as I believe. Otherwise, for adults, you can start using things like, I've seen success with phobia work and trauma of using virtual reality, which is fascinating to me. That's why I was talking about the intersection between trauma and technology. It's pretty interesting. It's all pretty much narrative work, right? So, I mean, if you could find something besides EMDR, EMDR is also a really good thing to work with trauma, but there's a lot of immersion therapy, narrative therapy, a lot of things where you're just basically trying to break the cycle, that cognitive cycle where you're constantly engaging in that fear or that response and having that thing happen.
Yeah. So going back to the virtual reality thing, because that's really interesting to me, is it just kind of exposure therapy for phobias? Is that what that winds up being?
Exposure therapy, right. So, I mean, you take them in a completely safe environment, but the virtual reality, I was at a conference and they had you try the helmet on specifically around a phobia of heights, right? And so you put on the thing and all of a sudden you're standing at a cherry picker, like one of those things they lift you up super, super high. And so I don't really have a fear of heights, but when I'm up on this cherry picker, it feels real because it tricks your brain into thinking that it's real, the way that the program was wired. It's fascinating. And so, your body, they had shown studies of after 2 or 3 sessions with this virtual reality method, people that were engaging in this phobia or that had this phobia were virtually cured for a period of time.
Wow.
It's pretty fascinating.
For a period of time, did they have is it limited?
Follow-up sessions. No, they needed to do follow-up like 6 months, 12 months and stuff. But after 2 or 3 sessions, they had shown such significant improvement that they could actually go to a shopping mall and approach an escalator because before they couldn't do anything like that.
Wow.
Really
that is really interesting. Yeah. Can you turn that like half down? Not quite. All right, that's good. Thank you. All right, so you mentioned that one. We have another question. Is there a way to determine whether a past trauma is something you should seek therapy for or whether you are over it? Good night, baby.
I don't know if one ever really gets over it. So if you're asking that question, then that tells me there might be something that's triggering a response for you. So therefore, it wouldn't hurt just to go in and see a therapist. If you experienced something that happened to you, say when you were 10 and you're in your 40s, and you're starting to have maybe, you've never had a long-term relationship before and you're not exactly sure why, it might be time to go see a therapist about that stuff. But I don't think there's ever really an over it thing. It's like we often hear parents will say, they were really young when this thing happened. They're not going to remember anything. But, as the body keeps the score, that type of literature will tell you is that stuff is stored in your body. Are you ever going to truly let it go? And are you just filling in the gaps? Like back to my analogy of, the gap, the gash in the table. Are you ever really healing that process? Or are you just coating it over with a suit of lacquer and moving on? I don't know. Yeah. It's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're questioning, the best thing you could do is just go talk to somebody. And that way,
Sorry, Ben.
Was in the wrong channel looking for the interview. Well, you're here now. That is okay. You're here now. Welcome. Get out of captioning the captions, input from your pros, and put on the other side. So I've actually been looking for something that's able to do that. If you guys do know of something that's able to pull captions from Discord or Zoom specifically, those are the 2 things that I use. However, that kind of gets into like some sticky legal realm, because then you are recording, even though this is a recording already. It could be construed as recording without permission, if that makes sense. I don't know if that would apply though, since it's already a recording. I don't know. If you find something that will let me do that, I would love to. I have been looking for something that will let me do that.
It's out there on the internet. I would just assume it's recorded and posted all over in place.
Yes. Yeah. Most definitely. Okay. We should ask Alex. He might know. That's true. Okay. So Oh, you mentioned EMDR also, and I had a question about that on Twitter today from somebody who didn't have a really specific question, just said, how does EMDR work? And so I linked him to a website to kind of explain it to him. And I know that it's based on, you kind of close your eyes and you're tracking movement very specifically, and then you bring something to your mind that is related to what you're trying to work on. And it's kind of like mindfulness. But can you explain to us a little bit better how EMDR works and what it does? That's the website that I sent him to. Good to know.
Quick Google.
Yeah.
So EMDR is one of those things like, what does that acronym stand for again? Because every time I try to remember it, I cannot remember the damn thing. So it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And so I've been through EMDR before, and it was a really fascinating experience. There's different ways you can do it. You can do it with tracking via a light, or you can do it via sounds. So there's some clinicians will use a sound bar or a light bar. So it literally has a dot, and then you track the dot going back and forth on this light bar over and over and over again. And then that too is very much a narrative-based therapy, but it's engaging your senses at the same time. So as you're tracking that light bar, or you're listening one ear or the other, right, and you have these sensors in your hand, that allows you to basically talk about the sensations that you're having as you're revealing that trauma that you went through. So let's say that you were significantly abused as a child. If you talk about this most significant abuse that you experienced, I don't know, let's make up something horrific if you want to, you can talk about that. And as you're talking about it, you're tracking through that bar or the sound, and as you experience it and you feel it, you press the button, or you say, my stomach is really starting to ache, or I'm starting to sweat, or my heart is really starting to race. And then the idea is that by talking about that repeatedly, again, through the narrative method of therapy, that you're unlocking those traumas that are stored down on a cellular level through process.
Yeah. That's really cool to me. I've never done that before. I've never gone through any of that or known anybody who has. So it's really interesting to hear. Oh, cat.
Your cat is amazing.
He's fantastic. He's a wonderful cat, but he likes to stand on my keyboard, which is not okay. So
I've seen his tail summon the screen a couple times.
I try to like make room for him over here on the side, but then he doesn't like the room. So yes, he is fluff butt. But I'm glad that you linked the same website that I did for the person on Twitter, and hopefully that's helpful to them. They didn't ask me any other questions, so
that's a good one.
Yeah.
And I have to say that I appreciate how prolific you are with your posting of mental health resources on Twitter all the time. I don't know how you have the time. It's fantastic. So good job.
I will tell you my secret for how I do it all the time. I set them all up on TweetDeck for the day, and then they just post once an hour for the whole day. So it takes a little bit of time to set them up. Cat, I swear. It takes a little bit of time to set them up on TweetDeck every day, or sometimes I'll set up 2 days, or on a Saturday I might set it up for Saturday and Sunday or whatever. But that is how I get it all on there, and then it's just a matter of keeping up with the replies and stuff. So nice. It makes for some good conversations, and it helps me stay on kind of topic for the day.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So our next question comes from Bite Mark. She says, any tips or tricks? Tips or tricks for learning to trust a therapist enough to actually open up? Like, I know my therapist is there to help and not judge and all that jazz logically, but I still have trouble making the talking happen. That's a good question.
That's a really good question. And I think you may have heard this from other people who do this business too, but therapists are people too, right?
Yeah.
So if you walk into somebody's office and you don't like the feeling of the place, and you don't like the way the person is looking at you, or you don't like the way that they're speaking to you, give it a session, give it 2 sessions. But if you don't like it, don't stay. That's it. It's that easy. There are plenty of clinicians out there, hopefully for you, that you can go to another location. Tips and tricks. I mean, trust your gut, because that's my number one tip. If you walk into a therapist's office and you feel like you don't like them, don't stay. Go somewhere else. Therapists. I love that the idea is that we don't judge, but I don't think that's true. Honestly, I don't, because we have to judge. We have to be able to categorize and label and put things how they are in order to provide the adequate service. So anytime a therapist is doing treatment with you, they have to be able to say that XYZ is happening to justify their seeing you to an insurance company. So if I can't justify why you're seeing me, which means I am judging and labeling the behaviors and the symptoms that I'm seeing, then I'm not going to be able to provide service to you. So again, I think it goes back to, do you feel like you can connect with this person as a human being? If you don't like that person's style, if you don't like the way they speak, or even the office presence, then don't go to that clinician, go somewhere else.
I'm glad to hear you reinforce that. We have talked about that a few times on here. You know, the whole purpose of having these mental health Mondays with professionals in particular, because I am not a professional, is to kind of show that you guys are relatable. You're people. You have, you know, kind of the same, what does my therapist say? She says hookups, hang-ups, and...
Hookups and hang-ups, yeah.
Yeah, there's another H in there somewhere. And that everybody has them, and that, you know, most people are no different. But, y'all, seriously, don't be afraid to fire your therapist. Like, get somebody that you like. I've had to fire a therapist before, and it was one of the best things that I ever did, because now I love mine.
How empowering is that for you, too?
Yeah, right. Well, and she just, you know, she was a great person. I think that there's a definite set of people that she would be great working with. It just wasn't me, and I'm really glad that I did, because now my therapist is just, we click, so it's good.
I think one other thing to take away from the therapist is that not only do you have to connect with that person, but I just totally lost my train of thought, so never mind, disregard.
It's okay. It's all right.
Sorry. But yeah, if you have trouble, go ahead.
I was just going to say I have trouble talking about my stuff to people I already know and trust, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so if I have a friend who's struggling and I see some of these signs of...
I remember now.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. If you remember, please.
So if you're in a therapeutic relationship with somebody and you feel that relationship has devolved, and I'm going to call it devolving for a reason, into a strictly friend relationship, get out and go somewhere else.
And there's like a 7-year rule or something, right? For after therapy that you're not
being friends with.
Yeah, that you're not supposed to, or is it business? You're not supposed to do business with someone, or no, you're just like not supposed to. I don't remember
what the stat is. 7 years sounds good to me.
Yeah,
I'll stick with 7.
Yeah.
I mean, I am reluctant to. I've had people that I've done therapy with come and try to like friend me on LinkedIn or whatever it is, connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook, and I'm like, it's been 10 years, but I still don't want you on my social networks.
Yeah.
Because we as clinicians have to have very strict boundaries because our licenses are potentially at risk. So.
Yeah, the only reason I even know that that's a rule is because I do my nails every week. Right now, all my glitter is falling off, but they were these really nice glitter nails. And every week when I go in, like the first thing that we talk about is what I did with my nails. And she's like, you know, if you weren't a client, I would say you should do my nails. But
do you do your own nails then?
Yeah, I do. I do them every Sunday. Actually, right here. So I have that's my nail polish all back there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then I have you can't see it, but up here on the wall, I have a wall of nail polish too. And nice. I just got a whole bunch of glitter in, which is why I did the glitter nails.
You'd have a stream of just you doing your nails.
I actually made a TikTok video of me doing my nails this weekend. So it was my first TikTok video. And it would be literally watching paint dry if I did it on Twitch or something. So that wouldn't be great. Half of it is just watching. Half of it is just waiting for it to dry. Okay, so our next question is just, if I have a friend who's struggling with trauma or PTSD, potential PTSD, see some of these signs in them, how do I encourage them to seek help? Like, is there a way not to encourage them to seek help, specifically if they have PTSD? Is there a good way in general just to encourage someone to seek help?
Is there a good way? And it obviously depends on the variables within the relationship. So how good of a relationship do you have with this person? How frank can you be? So if Bite Mark came to you and said, I think you need to see a therapist because you're turning into a complete hoser bitch, then, that's what we need to address, right? But because the trauma that you've experienced, and I remember you got into this car accident and maybe you're divorced and blah, 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 and poof, it's all out there. But if it's just like buddy who doesn't really know you, you have to be really tactful with your words, because a lot of times when you're telling somebody that they need to see a therapist, they get defensive.
Yeah.
Right. So if you just stick to the facts and say that, hey, Joe, you've seemed really defensive lately, and I want to make sure that I'm here to be with you and listen. So just sit with them and listen. First of all, you don't have to be a professional to be able to do that, but just to sit with them and listen. And then if you hear things like they're feeling numb and detached, they're angry all the time, they're maybe self-destructive, or they're talking about the physical symptoms that often come with the PTSD, then you can just say, it might be a good idea to talk to a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Refer them to one of us, and maybe we can help connect them to one.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah, one of the things that we talked about in mental health first aid also was when you're talking to someone who is struggling or you find out is struggling, to be really specific in your ask. Be like, hey, we should talk sometime. Say, no, are you free in 20 minutes? Let's go grab a coffee or something like that. So get something specific, and then definitely referring them out to a professional as well. But we're all about the peer support and non-judgmental listening here. So is there an overall well-being strategy you would recommend to anyone with or without an underlying disorder?
Sleep.
Sleep.
I guess
crap.
Things, right? I know, right? So, as you can tell, my kids were up super late last night and I couldn't sleep. So sleep is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep, eat right, exercise, and meditate if you can. That's it. Straight. Everybody, what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Everybody knows, but we often can't find time.
Yeah.
Or we don't know how we can make time. I've sat with lots of families who have been going through something significant, like their one lady I was talking to was, her daughter had attempted suicide or was thinking about attempting suicide, and I was talking to mom about different ways that she could cope with her stuff. And mom says, well, I work 40 hours a week. I don't know what I can do. My kid's got behavioral concerns and she's thinking about suicide or whatever it was. And I just said, if you can carve out 5 minutes a day, get up 5 minutes earlier, whatever it is, just to give yourself that mindful experience to yourself, set that aside for you, then that'll be something that you weren't able to do before, and that'll help you towards the building blocks of being a better, more functional human being. So I think we all know what we should do, but we often can't, or we don't know how to carve away that time.
Yeah.
And having somebody just validate that experience of ours, to know that we own ourselves and that we can have that time. We don't need to give 110% of ourselves to other people all the time. Even as parents, we have to be able to say, this is my time. Unless you're bleeding or on fire, I'm going to straight up, I need some my time. The door's closed. I'm in the bathroom. Back up.
Where's the blood?
Right. You're not bleeding. I don't need to amputate.
Mm-hmm.
We're good. So, yeah.
Yep. I like that. That's great. Philip says, I did not expect that from a call. Oh, yeah. You got a phone call. What happened? Everything okay? Hope everything's okay. And now the doozy of a question that I try to always end with. If anybody else has any Q&A that you would like to get in there, please go ahead and enter it while we're talking about this one. We are kind of coming to the end of what I had planned. So, look, already. Should I be worried if some things that objectively should be traumatic don't seem to have any impact on me? Ooh,
good question. Yeah. You want me to answer it now? Or
yeah, no, go ahead. No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, and so I think I'll go back to hospice. When I worked in hospice, the thought was that everybody processes their grief differently, right? So the same thing would be a traumatic experience. So if let's say you've seen a significant motor vehicle accident, or you've seen something extremely horrific, and you walk away from it like, I'm good, no sweat, no problems, not going to have any experiences from it. Might behoove you to say, why am I not feeling anything about this? This is something that is so drastically, like maybe your friend next to you is in tears and can't eat and is having difficulty sleeping. We all have our own individual life experiences that shape who we are and what we become and all that stuff. But if it's something that is drastically so significant that you feel like you should be experiencing something, then again, I go back to, it doesn't hurt to necessarily talk to a therapist. It shouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, we all experience grief and we all experience trauma in our own way. If you feel like it's significant enough to be asking that question, then yeah, I would say we probably want to talk to a therapist about it.
Yeah. Could that be kind of a signal of a little bit of a detachment as well, kind of thing?
Yeah, the detachment piece for sure. Right. Are you numb? Are you detached? Are you?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just not processing it, if you're just like, what the fuck? I'm going to go move on. Sorry, this is family friendly. I'll remind my language.
You're fine. Everyone has to click through that says they're not a child.
Okay, good.
She woke up with sleep paralysis, not being able to breathe, and felt like she was getting choked. Heart rate was up. Her dog was growling, which is unusual. She thought she saw someone in her room and nobody was there. She was scared and called me. Wow. I'm so sorry. Is she okay now? That sounds
terrifying.
Calm down? That does sound terrifying. Mama stream being family friendly, right? We are totally No cussing in my family friendly.
I gotta ask.
Twitch chat. No. No, not at all.
I do a Sunday stream with my 6-year-old. We'll do like Minecraft or something.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the only day I'm like, gotta kind of keep it low key.
Yeah.
It's not, not otherwise.
Yeah, I have a friend who, when he streams with his kid, like, I have to pay attention when I go into his chat to make sure his kid is not playing with him. Usually it's only when he's playing Apex, though. So, because otherwise it's like all bets are off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had to have a conversation with my kids about, this is not a kid's space. It's fine. She is now. I did some research too. Well, I'm glad she's okay, Philip. I'm glad she's okay. So our final question, then we'll get to any more Q&A. Mama herself isn't family friendly. She runs a dictatorship. True. That's true. Mm-hmm. So our question.
You mop the floor today?
Right. If you could change one thing about the mental health field or people's views of mental health professionals and educators, what would it be?
Yeah, that was a doozy question. I think first and foremost, it feels like money. We need money, lots of money. There needs to be more recognition that mental health professionals actually are due more money. I remember coming out of graduate school, so heaps in debt if you don't work your way through, making some stupid low amount with a master's degree and thinking to myself, why? What? Like, I just went through all this school and I have all this experience because you again, I think your previous guest who we did this actual pro thing with, he was talking about internships as being slave labor.
Josue. He was talking about that.
It is slave labor. We don't get paid as social workers anyway. For psychologists, you do get paid. Well, it depends on the clinical that you do, but yeah. It does feel like your pay is so low. So again, we would start at the governmental level. Let's have recognition that mental illness is a thing. Let's offer benefits for it that treat it. I've seen too many insurance companies that don't supply therapy for mental illness and couples and family therapy. I worked for a community nonprofit organization where the insurance did not provide therapeutic intervention for families and individuals. Like, you had like a very limited number of sessions that you could have as an individual, but then if you needed family sessions, they wouldn't pay for it.
Wow.
It just blew my mind. Yeah. I'm like, and we provide family services, and our insurance that we offer our employees won't allow that. That seems wrong. But there's a systemic problem with mental health in the country and arguably the world, but within the United States, where we don't pay enough for our mental health practitioners. There isn't union representation for a lot of the mental health practitioners. There's not enough money, straight up. But there isn't enough recognition that mental health is a type of health too, and that we all have mental health. It's always a thing. It's always there. And then how are we going to be able to take care of ourselves and make it better? So, yeah, I don't know. There's part of me that feels like we need to start education very early on to talk about. I mean, middle school, maybe late grade school, to have it start being taught.
There is another study. Also, yes, please, if you are not following Dr. D, please go give him a follow. Frost just gave him another shout out. Thank you, Frost. Please go give him a follow. He's a streamer as well. Just started a few months ago, so fantastic. Thanks.
I would hope you're following if you're here.
My own channel. So there is another study that's being done, I think, right now in the UK on middle school education in mental health. I'll have to find that one too, because I don't remember what it is. So it's like they started the education at a middle grade level, and then they started the education at a 12th grade level, and kind of some of the results are starting to come out about that, which is really fantastic. I'll find that. And
one of the streams that we had recently was talking about gun violence in schools for obvious reasons. To talk about, again, we go back to mental health because video games are getting so much blame. And as you talked about in my intro, technology is one of the things that I'm passionate about. Video games and gamification is very important to me. It feels very unfortunate to me that we're labeling games as being one of the big problems, right? And how are we going to be able to reinforce the need for mental health treatment when mental health education and the use of other has been such a big thing within our society politically? And it's a big thing. Like, you as the other are the most horrible thing. Therefore, we're going to pit you against you, and kind of that clanning behavior type of stuff. So my argument was much the same for mental health, was that in order to cure gun violence, in a sense, would be to provide more education at an earlier point to kind of intervene with a lot of that same type of mentality of not being able to care for yourself, not being able to care about others because they are the other. So why should we? Sad stuff.
Well, and it baffles me. It baffles me when people say that gaming is to blame for all the violence, because so it's just people in the US who game that have this problem? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, how is that possible? Because China and Japan are also rivals up there in gaming revenue, and have like, our violence and their violence with guns is like so different. Yep. Steal all of Mama's followers. You deserve them. It's fine. Hey, Jeb, how are you? We have 2 kids at school who wear trench coats, and some are uncomfortable with it, but the school isn't doing anything about it because they're in regulation. I mean, dress codes are a whole other thing. That's a problem. So.
Never any violence at all. You're right. Never.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I think do you remember that movie Crash? How long was that? Like 2000 something? But there was a quote in that movie where he talked about like, we're all just basically trying to crash into each other.
Yeah.
And like that stuck with me over the years. It's like, we're so detached from one another, where we're doing these things, and great. Twitch is fantastic, and MMORPGs are fantastic. But how often are we having physical contact with one another? We're actually face to face and doing these little things like hold somebody's hand. Yeah. The power of touch is amazing. Like, I mean, appropriately, may I hold your hand? Not
right.
Hold somebody. You know what I mean?
Yes. Consent. Consent
not
first.
Crash Bandicoot, which was an amazing game, but no, yeah.
Crash came out in 2004. Way to make me feel old.
Yeah, that's an old movie.
Okay, I'm not finding the study that I was. I know it's here somewhere. I'll find it. I'll find it and send it eventually.
Like Frost.
I learned from a pro I should grope for my mental health. No, absolutely not.
So one of the things that we're taught, social workers anyway, is like we always obtain consent. Mm-hmm. In the therapeutic treatment, you always obtain consent. Whose needs are being met by this intervention? What are you doing to serve the client's needs, the patient's needs, by doing this thing? If I'm going to go and stroke Frost's back when she's weeping, is that therapeutically indicated? And did I gain consent before I did that thing? Because I want to make sure that it's appropriate to do. A, is it therapeutically indicated? And B, is it appropriate? Is it ethical? And is there going to be any inferred reference by doing this thing? So do what I dare you.
Oh, good grief. We just talked about consent earlier.
It's a big thing.
All right. Well, if there are no other community questions, I will close by just giving you the opportunity. If there's anything you want to plug, we've plugged your stream a couple of times. You're welcome to do that again. Anything you're working on, or anything that we didn't cover in our interview that you just want to kind of take the floor about. Now's your time.
Because you're playing Dishonored, but still. What a great game. Let me think. So yeah, obviously I always appreciate follows. I always appreciate traffic. So I mean, if you guys want to come over to my stream and watch me play video games, I always say watch me fail at video games because I'm horrible at them. Lately, my fixation almost always is with online RPGs. So I've been playing this game called Shroud of the Avatar, which is free to play. It's fantastic. If you're into community and building, it's a free-to-play game. It's super awesome. I recommend everybody should try it out. Otherwise, the stream is the intent is much like Mama's. It's Mondays. I try to do a mental health Monday, but oftentimes my work life and family life makes it so I can't find the time. It's super hard. So I'll come on and say, hey, whatever. Bars, let's talk about whatever you want. And often it devolves into, let's talk about child protection. Let's talk about depression and suicide, because those are my expertise. I've been working in that field for long enough. We can talk about whatever is needed. So the stream, come by the stream anytime. Mental health supports anytime. My focus is just gaming. I want to game. I want to be there to provide support. And this is my therapeutic outing too. This is how I cope. I come on and I play games and I talk to people. So it's good to be able to give back and be able to play with people.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. We do have another question. So Phil McCracken, how has your day been? I heard it's healthy to ask. I love that question.
It's super good and tender. No, thank you. Absolutely. But how was my day? It was great. I played hooky today, so I hope none of my coworkers are watching the stream because my kids were up all night and I'm like, I'm not going to work on 2 hours or 3 hours of sleep. It's not happening. I'm going to stay home and rest.
You needed a mental health day. I mean, come on.
I need a mental health day.
They ought to understand that.
Yeah, right. Well, that's telling me. Yeah, tell on him. You're in trouble.
No. Oh,
so yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Bite Mark asks when you stream. So you mentioned Mondays.
Yeah, Monday, Wednesday, Friday typically is what I'll do. But lately, I mean, because usually in the evenings after the kids go to bed, that's what I'll do is I'll play games. So if I'm sitting on my computer, I'll boot up stream just to boot up stream. If my significant other says it's fine because she doesn't want to watch a show or something, then we'll stream and we'll do something. But Monday, Wednesday, Friday are my givens. Sunday, I've been kind of starting having my son do a Minecraft stream with me. We'll play Path of Exile together or something.
I love that.
Just so we can kind of engage over the computer a little bit. Mm-hmm. He likes that. So he's 6.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's good. Okay, if there are no other questions, chat, give me just a second to disconnect with our guests today, and I will be right back playing a game. I want a child to make them play games with me. That is a horrible reason to have a child.
It's a horrible reason. They're a lot of work. Don't do it.
It's not worth it.
Thank you, guys. It was nice to meet you all.
Ben, thank you for that sub. Y'all give me just a second. I will be right back.